For more Microsoft webcasts, please go to microsoft.com/webcasts. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to our TechNet webcast entitled SharePoint Server 2007 Search Technical Drill Down. I would like to introduce today's presenter, Matt Hester. Matt is a TechNet presenter for the Microsoft Corporation. And Matt, you now have the floor.
Thanks very much, Craig. Once again, everybody, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're calling in from. My name is Matt Hester, and today we're going to talk about SharePoint Server 2007. We're going to take a look at the search functions of this wonderfully new server product we have. Before we get started, just a couple things. I'm going to be taking questions towards the end of the day, but one of the most common questions I get asked is, Matt, where can I find all the questions after the fact? Well, you can try to type them down as we go, or you got to give me a few days, but in a couple days what I will do is up on my blog at blogs.technet.com/MatthewMS. I will put all of the Q&A from this particular webcast up there, and I'll scrap it and I'll put some resources, as well as the links to watch the stream of this webcast as well. They'll all be on my blog. You got to give me a few days to go ahead and get that done, because oftentimes I'm traveling, but for the most part, they will be there to support you. So what are we going to talk about today? And what are we going to actually look for today? Today we're going to focus in on search. Specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about what's the importance of centralizing information, and how do we look at this from a search enhancement perspective, and what are some of the administrative improvements that we've put into the SharePoint search product. And we've done a ton of things underneath the covers here, folks, to really improve the overall experience. So we're going to talk about that. It'll help a little bit if you have some familiarity with our Windows environment, as well as if you've played with SharePoint in the past or in the current today. And we're going to start with our agenda. We're going to start with talking about what the challenges are. I think we all look at how do you find information. I think that's the biggest challenge. We're going to talk about what are some of the end-user improvements, and what are some of the administrative level improvements, and then we'll just talk about some best practices from a deployment, or just from general best practices, I should say. So what are the search challenges? Folks, when you think about this, when you think about your environments, ask yourself this question: can people find information easily? Is it located on their desktops? Is it somebody else that has the information they need? Or is it located in a business application? Or is it located on a data drive? Where is that data? Is it across the network? Is it a public folder? Where is that data located? More importantly, how fast and how easily can people get to that information to make timely decisions, right? We should hopefully all fundamentally agree at one level, right? The faster I can make the decisions, the better my company's off at the end of the day, as long as I have the correct information to make the correct decision. So that's what we're talking about here, is how do we look at that challenge and how do we move forward? How do we actually take a look at it, especially when you think at, in our industries today, our amount of data that we have is constantly growing. And our users' expectations, I create that document, I should be able to find it, whether it's on my local hard drive or on a SharePoint site somewhere, or on a file share, or somewhere on the intranet of my environment. I should be able to find that information and find it quick, right? Because if you think about, if you look at live search, it tells you how long it took to do a search. What's the common joke? I don't think it's really a joke. It's serious, but it's also, I think, one of the mantras of any search company, right? And definitely of Microsoft. Yeah, it takes 3.2 seconds to search the hard drive or search the internet, but it takes 5 days to search your intranet for a document. Well, how do we get that information down, and how do we get it around? And speed's not always the key here. It's speed and relevancy, right? I can have an index with 20 billion documents inside of it, but if none of those documents meet my users' expectations of what they're looking for, well, guess what? Relevancy fails there. And we've done a lot of things I just don't have time to talk about, but relevancy is one of the key areas that we've improved. We have large amounts of data in critical locations. What locations? We talked about it. We have databases or business applications. How many of you out there have SAP or Siebel or some other business application? Ask yourself this question: how easy is that information to get searched or indexed? Well, it's easy if you have the front-end client for that. Well, how easy is that client to use for the average bear inside your organization, for the average user? How easy is it for them to actually find and use that information? All right, if you're saying, well, it's there, but it's probably not the easiest, then this is what you need to think about when you're thinking about a search solution, especially a search solution like Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007. Complex administration, especially if you did this, if you loaded the search with SharePoint Server 2003, it was fairly complex. I'm going to show you some of the stuff today, and everything I show you today there has not been one line of code written to do. Other than I do have an application that I link to, and there's obviously code written to create that application, right? But I'm not going to write any code to be able to leverage the data inside that application. Okay, I'm going to be able to bring it in without having to really do a whole lot of work, and I'll talk about that. But we want to make this easy. Why? Because if it's hard, people are not going to use it. People are not going to use the technology. So we want to make sure that we make this administration very, very, very easy to do inside the environments. Lost time, lost money. I think that's at the end of the day, the longer it takes to search something, that the longer somebody could have been doing something else, right? They could have been doing something else during that time, or the project that they're currently working on inside the environment. So how do we meet the challenges? How do we actually take all this data pool that we have and work with it? Well, first off, the nice thing about SharePoint servers, we have a central repository, we have a central index that stores all that information for us to be able to look. Now that information could be data, just be plain old documents like a Word document. It could be business data coming out of an SAP, Siebel, or just a database application. It could also be people. We actually support a rich set of people search capabilities built in to the SharePoint server products, and we have some very powerful things that we can do to help find people. Because think about this, sometimes the knowledge isn't always just in a database or in a document, it's in somebody's head, right? And if that person leaves the company for whatever reason, what happened to all the knowledge? Hopefully you can capture it before they leave or have it somewhere. But if those people are there, how do we find the person that was related to that person? And I'm going to show you some of this stuff today as we drill into it, for example. Flexible and accurate search. The search here and the relevancy algorithms that we put behind the covers here, folks, is just simply amazing. We've done a lot of great work. We've done a lot of great things to make sure the search engine A is easy. That gives it a familiar interface. So if you've used the desktop search engine, or if you've used the search engine in Vista, or if you've used the search engine on Live Search, Microsoft Live Search, it should look similar, and that's the idea. We want to make it there. But what makes the search engine and user interface great inside of SharePoint is that it's completely extensible. It's very, very flexible to be able to tune and tweak. And we'll do a little bit of that work today to kind of give you an idea of how to make these tabs and how to make these search tabs look for your business and look for your environment that we have. We also want to make sure the search results are accurate. At the end of the day, once again, we've got to make sure this is what information is looking for. One of the nice administrative things that we've put here actually is that the ability to have search reporting. So we can kind of give you an idea based on what kind of queries people are running, what's the most common query that you have in your environments, and also we can say, hey, what are the results looking like? So we can get a general idea, especially maybe people are finding a result that's on a broken link somewhere. Well, the great thing about this, guess what, is that we'll have a report saying, hey, they can't get to this link, or something's coming up and they're just not be able to get to it. This might lead you to possible, hey, maybe that server's not turned on, or something's wrong with the DNS entry. You're going to be able to get very good information, not only for the users, but also you're going to have good reporting to help find out what people are looking for, what's top of mind inside the organization. Now, the last thing I want to mention about accurate results here, folks, and accurate search for a second, is that SharePoint respects the security of the files or the data that we bring over. So if the permissions are such, because we actually index the ACLs, we actually index the permissions for these files, we will respect that security, and we do what is called security trimming during search results. So that document may be in the index, but whether I have permission to see that document is a whole other question, right? So if I can't actually have permission, if I have permission to say denied access, well, guess what? I don't get a hold of that file. It won't even show up in my results. And this is one of the key differentiators I just want to mention briefly, is that when you think about, hey, I want my internet to look just like the internet when it comes to search, and I'll tell you, just one of the main reasons why you don't want that to happen is security. Think about the internet for a second. You search the internet anonymously, right? You run across those indexes as an anonymous user. There's no security permissions governing what you can or cannot find. Inside of a business, folks, we've got to have security. And more importantly, we've got to have a search engine that respects the security of your organization. And SharePoint does that. And it does it in such a way that if they don't have permission, guess what? They don't even see it. All right? They don't see the document they're allowed to get a hold of. And the results should be fast. And this is that 2.7 days. I will tell you the results here are pretty fast. They're even we even have what's called I just forgot the name of the official name of the feature, but it's in a way it's real-time propagation. Think about this: is that if you've indexed before in SharePoint, if you indexed and you had to wait for that index to be built, you couldn't search it. Well, what happens now is we have instant propagation. So what happens is the minute that crawl starts to happen across a content source, I can actually start asking that area questions. Now, obviously, since it's not completely done with its entire indexing process, I'm going to get back results, but they won't be a complete set of results. So we don't have to wait for those content sources to be indexed. So if you had that pain in prior versions, we got rid of that. So what are some of the benefits of implementation? When we think about this, when we think about our search strategies across this, really Microsoft is playing in three big arenas. We have the web with Windows Live Search or MSN Search. We have the desktop stuff that's built into Windows Vista, and the stuff that we've given as free downloads for the Windows Desktop group, which is Windows Desktop Search, which, by the way, folks, kind of something that happened in the background here at Microsoft is the Windows Desktop group used to actually be inside the MSN group, but now they're a part of the Windows group. Why is that important? Because now they're going to be a part of the Windows developmental lifecycle, and that more importantly, when they write their products or they write their updates for their products, it's going to have Windows at the core of it. Whereas before it was kind of a bolt-on, here it's an integrated part. What does that do? It increases performance, it increases all kinds of fun things around reliability, security. It just does a much nicer job of working with the operating system instead of being an extra add-on. Now, with that said, folks, I will tell you, the additional add-on that you throw on top of Windows XP is simply fabulous from a desktop searching perspective. And then we have the intranets solution, where we have 2003 today, you have 2007 just came out, something you want to be able to look at to be able to work with those environments. Really, we want to have a consistent search environment across all three of these platforms. The default search pages, folks, pretty much look the same, with the only exception kind of being the desktop search, and that's just how it's presented with your little taskbar icon, or if it shows up in the Windows like it does in Windows Vista. Increased relevancy, these are one of the things that you just got to take a look and try. I know we've done a lot of work underneath the covers here, folks. It's not enough for me to actually show you the relevancy of this. It's enough to know that you just have to test it, and you have to become a believer of relevancy. It's like if you ever used any search engine on the internet, and somebody says, "Well, try this one; it's better." Do you? Do you trust it right away, or do you kind of go back to your old ways because you know every time you've run a search on that engine, you were there? For example, way back when I first joined Microsoft, I was an avid Google guy. Right? I used Google a lot. I didn't know about our live search. And ever since our live search got the improved relevancy algorithms, it's been a little over 2 years, I believe, probably even sooner than that, or later than that, or it's been a lot longer than that, I should say. I've been nothing but a live search, and I find everything I need to do inside that tool. I don't have to go outside of that cloud. And folks, it's not enough for me to tell you. You have to try this on your own to look for those things. New function, we have people search. You're going to see this today here in just a few minutes, as a matter of fact. I'll show you what that looks like. We also can index and search data in enterprise applications. Now, just kind of let me explain. There actually are 4 different versions of the search server product. Now, I don't like the names of them, folks, but I am going to tell you the full names of them to kind of give you an idea. We actually have 2 dedicated search products. We actually have a product called Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007 for Search Standard Edition, and we have an Enterprise Edition of that same level. Main difference between those two products is that the standard product can only index up to 500,000 documents, and the Enterprise product can index an unlimited size of index. Now, how big can a single index be? In the tens of millions. And I know at corporate for a fact we have a couple indexes running around the 50 million, 60 million document mark. Once again, how big your index is isn't really so important. It's what do the search results come back. Now, those are our 2 products. That's all they do is just search, and they do mostly just search around documents. We have 2 other products. We have Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007 Standard and 2007 Enterprise. They do everything that the search SKUs do, but both the Standard and Enterprise Edition do people search as built in as part of the search engine that we have, and only the Enterprise version. Okay, let me be very clear on this. Only the Enterprise version will index data. When I show you the thing later called the Business Data Catalog, or BDC for short, which you'll see today, I'm searching active data coming off of it. It happens to be the AdventureWorks demo database that we give with SQL. But what you're going to see there is only available in the enterprise SKU. So in my demo environment, I have SharePoint Portal Server 2007 Enterprise built up inside of my demo environment. All right. So what are some of the things? Examining end-user improvements. First off, we have a revamped ranking engine. We have very specific results. It's something you're going to have to look at and play with. From that standpoint, we also have a bunch of new algorithms that allow us to utilize both internal and possible external information. Really, it gets to the get of how we built this tool. We built this with a combination of some of the folks at MSN as well as some of the internal product groups kind of coming together and having a search engine that gets the best of both worlds while still being to be very business friendly, very organization friendly. And you'll see some of this as we go through. And we've even put in some nice things that we learned from the web, right? You know, what if somebody misspells the word and we know it's a common spelling mistake? Well, we have a did you mean kind of thing built in. We have an ability to put best bets into results. Well, we as an IT administrator could say, you know, if somebody types in HR form letter, we know they probably want the HR website. Maybe they couldn't remember the URL. Well, guess what we can do? We can redirect them and put that as a best bet. Say, you know what, you probably want to go to HR, the website here for this. You can control all of that. All right, so there's some nice things that we've built in under the covers, and there's also some great utilities we have as administrators to control how people come into the environment. People and expertise. We actually have built in by default a tab for just people finding. What this does is it actually allows us to index and search any LDAP directory. Now, I will tell you, I do, when I say any LDAP directory, I have problems with that, although technically we speak LDAP. Active Directory is pretty well documented of how we get there and how to talk to other non-Active Directory LDAP directories. There is documentation out there. Now, how easy it is to tie the two together depends on your implementation of LDAP or what you've done inside the organization. I will tell you this is a great better together benefit with Active Directory and SharePoint Search. In reality, what happens is that we need that initial LDAP connection to actually import that information into our index. So when you create a search for people, you're not actually touching the Active Directory domain controllers for the results. You're looking at the local index set that's built on the Exchange server. So in a sense, we import that information in to the index for searching and querying. Once again, part of the information we're importing is some of the security around that. And we also have results with our group what I called social distance. And really, I think of social distance as not only what are the people that person likes, but also I think of an organizational distance. So when you do a search inside of our company, if you type my name and do a people search inside of Microsoft's website, it would come up with a list of telling you who my boss is all the way up to the chain to Bill Gates. And you'll see a little bit of that today as we click through the results, as we drill into the environment for us to work with. SharePoint Server brings business data, and I'll show this to you. But at the end of the day, think about business data. Think about your giant business applications that you have in your environments. Think about that Siebel app or that database you have. And the database doesn't have to be SQL. It could be Oracle. It could be anything that pretty much speaks any open database connection language, ODBC language. We're going to be able to talk to it. How easy is it to get data out of that? Okay, how easy can a regular person get data out of that application? Do they need a special client to do it? Do they need special permissions? Do they need to know how to write the query inside that index? What I'm going to show you today, folks, is using the same kind of index that we have now. Let's look for that business data, and let's actually find it very, very easily. It's code-free. Now, with code-free, I should try to draw. Let me try to draw it here. Let me draw a little star. It's kind of code-free, right? Let me put my little, that's my built-in asterisk, right? You do have to create what is called an application definition file, and this is the definition of all that application. I'll show you one. It's an XML document that's there, but it basically defines what that application looks like, what databases it has inside of it, what entities are inside those databases, what the fields look like, all that stuff. You have to know the definition. You basically have to tell SharePoint what that application looks like at a definition level. So if you've ever created a database, I don't care if it's an Access or SQL, you had to give it a table name, you had to give it field names, you had to set field parameters. Okay, this is a member field, this is a date or time or text. That's really all you have to give SharePoint Server, is that kind of that definition of what this application looks like. And it's called an application definition. And I'm going to show you how you get there today, and I'm also going to talk about how you can get there without having to really do potentially a whole lot of work. We also want customization and integration. When we bring data that's from a business application into SharePoint, we get a couple benefits. The one you're going to see today is all around search, and be able to integrate that in to our search engines and our indexes and so on. But there's also tons of benefit to having business data in SharePoint Server 2007 just from the get-go, because now that becomes data that I can actually bubble up through a web part. So instead of giving somebody a client, maybe they can look at the list, or they don't want to do search, you can actually make a web page that says business data, and it's a web part that actually has a data sheet view of that application. So there's lots of additional benefits other than search, although search is a huge one, that we can do with business data. So enough of me talking here. What I want to actually show you here is kind of the end user improvement. So all I'm going to do in this first set of demos here, folks, is fire up the console. I'm going to do a couple searches. I'm going to talk about it. Then we're going to come back and we're going to do some administration work, talk about what that is. Then I'll hop back in the demo and show you what that administrative side looks like as well. So let me go ahead and fire up my demo. And hopefully everybody should be seeing this. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my search window. So what I have here is just a standard SharePoint 2007 site. And in this site, I don't really have anything too special. It's just pretty much the default view, although I did add one additional thing, and it's this tab called Customers I have over here. Alright, so for my demo here, just to kind of give you a little bit of a level set of expectations here, I do have a single server that you're seeing right now. It has SharePoint Server 2007. It has Exchange. It has SQL. Not only does a SQL to support the SharePoint side of it, but also just a dedicated SQL database. It also has Active Directory here. So as you can imagine, this server is under quite a load. Now, normally in real life, folks, we can do it on a single server, but most likely some of this is going to be spread across the infrastructure a bit. So if it's a bit pokey, it's just the nature of our environment. But think about this. I have a laptop. I have a single laptop that I'm doing all this for, and I can actually play with the technology. That's what's really cool about Virtual PC. So here's my Virtual PC environment. I'm going to go up into my search bar, and I'm just going to type in Byke. B-Y-K-E. And I'm going to do a search. Now, obviously, I've misspelled that word, right? So how is the search engine going to respond to that? Well, believe it or not, if there actually were matches to that word, it would show me the results. But also at the same time, it's going to show me here the results in a second and give me the option for did you mean. It's going to say, hey, you misspelled this. Did you mean bike, B-I-K-E? And we'll see that result pop up here in just a second as it chugs. Now I know a lot of you are spelling perfect and never get any spelling wrong, especially when you're doing searches. This is one of these nice little learnings that we've had from the internet, right? People mistype or they just don't spell the word correctly. Well, guess what? We can do those types of things and have the technology really help the users speed up and find that information for us. So I'm going to give this just a second here, and hopefully it should come up and tell us that I misspelled the word inside of here. Come on. Come on up. Tell me you misspelled it. As you can see, my search engine is loving me today. I should say not my search engine. My search engine actually is really, really good. When this is on real hardware, folks, it really does fly. Come on, Virtual PC. I even said my prayer to the demo people before I started up my systems today. Give us just a second here. Hopefully my results will come up. There we go. Come on, page. Trust me, folks, it is going to tell me that I misspelled that word. And I expect cheers. Well, I want to hear them all the way here in Texas where I'm presenting from today. Oh, there we go. Notice it says, did you mean, I didn't have any results, so it still will try to find results. So sometimes you have words or variations of words where you actually have them find it. So I can just click on that link, and that's going to show me different results for that word bike. Now what you're going to see here, folks, is something that's actually pretty interesting here in a second as it fires up, is that it's going to show me a bunch of what looks like URL pages. But what you're actually seeing here, it should be coming up right now, there it is, What you're seeing here is, hey, these look like a bunch of URLs that maybe I've referenced inside of this environment. And if you look through this list, they look like a bunch of names of resellers of bikes. What you're looking at here, folks, and this one is going to take a second. So I'm going to open this up in a new window. That's the stuff I'm going to try to do here. And I'm going to bring it up into an actual window, and you're going to see the profile as it comes up. And I'm going to give that a second to chug because I've actually modified the result set for this. But what you're seeing here, folks, believe it or not, these references to URLs are actually business data. It's actually coming off of the actual business data itself. So I open it up into a separate thing. I'm going to let that one chug because it takes a second because I have Excel web parts fired up there as well. And you'll see some additional data that we have. So what are some other things I can do? So let me go ahead and just clear out my search criteria, hop over to people for a second. Notice that we have a tab, and I'll show you in one of the demos that we'll do today. I actually will show you how to add in tabs and how do you tie that back. It's very, very easy to do. Come on, people tab. See if that one's still chugging. I'm really beating on my server today. Okay, let me go back to my search tab here real quick. And let me head over to people. Now inside of here, I'm just going to go ahead and type in John real quick and do a search. And what you're going to see here are the results for my people search. And it's actually going to group them and give me options based on the properties it finds about those people, about who they are. Notice that I can refine the search, lead installer. Hey, maybe I'm looking for just a graphic title, or maybe I'm looking for a particular department, and I see these different folks that are here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on one of them. Let's click on John here, John Chen at the top. Give that a second to come up, and while that's coming up, let me go back and show you, and this one's still chugging away, but you get the idea here, is notice by clicking on that record, folks, that actually pulled data across and gave me information about that company. It gave me basic information. It gave me information around, contacts, phone number, who the people are, the main contacts, and eventually it's going to give me some revenue history and some reseller sales here in just a second. But it also will give me documents that may be related to this. Now, these are one of the key things you have to understand about SharePoint that's really, really nice, is that we just don't index the content of the document. We do all that, right? We get the title of the document, we get all the data inside the document, but we also index the metadata of the document, which is the authors, the date and times. You can even have customized attributes, and with SharePoint you can even force some unique metadata on top of that, like tagging a document. So you can say, okay, this is related to this customer, or this is related to that business, or this is related to that lawyer and a particular case he's working on. You can actually add in the tags. And remember, when you upload documents inside of SharePoint, folks, guess what you can do? You can enforce that tagging, right? You can force people to put tags or properties on top of those documents so they can actually work with that data. So what you're seeing here are some of the documents and presentations that have probably been tagged with Bike World or have the terms Bike World somewhere inside that document. So when you see these documents here, they may not have that word anywhere in there, but somewhere in the metadata it says, you know what, this belongs to Bike World. And you're not going to see the revenue history and so on. That's not going to come. It's just not going to come up today for us. But you get the idea that I can bring in a pretty rich experience as we go through the environment. Right? And my John is still chugging here, so I'm hammering away at my server. Now, one of the things I do want you to notice is that when I come inside of here, notice that when I move up to the top, and I'm going to scroll up to the top here so I can get it, I'm going to hover over Edit Customer. Now, if you look in the lower left-hand corner of my browser window, you should see the website. It's right above the start in the virtual PC you're seeing. You see http://dummy. Well, this comes into a question we have to ask, is that we can bring up the results for read-only viewing inside of SharePoint. That's very easy for us to do. But now you have to ask your question, what if somebody needs to make a modification? Where should they make that modification at? And the answer is, well, we really don't want them to put it inside the SharePoint index. We don't want that change there. We need that change to go all the way back to the database that data came from, right? We want that data to actually be updated in the real source, not the index source. So what you're seeing here is SharePoint's default way of handling that. It gives you dummy websites that do absolutely not a thing, as you would imagine. But what happens here, folks, is that you have the ability to customize. Okay, I want people to be able to edit customers. From this index, they should be able to edit it. There's a couple ways you can do this. One, you can have that dummy page do a redirect to that client application, to that client-side application for SAP or Siebel or for database that allows them to look at that data and update it. Or you could create an InfoPath form or some kind of form workflow solution that when they click on that, it brings up a form that's tied back to the real database. So then when they make the changes there, that change is going directly back to the database. Once again, you want to be able to give them an interface that's easy for the average user to use. In your business's case, that may be that application interface. Or it might just be a simple form. Hey, here's where you can edit username, or edit address, or edit phone number, or company name, or those types of things. You have complete control over what kind of actions, if you allow them to do actions from inside of SharePoint. Very, very straightforward, very, very easy to do inside the environment. I'm going to go ahead and close this page down, but it should get the idea that we have some abilities to work with that. So I'm going to go ahead and close that window down. And my search result is just running slow today. Oh, there we go. It's probably getting chugged down by that. But notice, here's John. Tells me a little bit of information about him. He has his colleagues, so on his SharePoint site, he's probably added people as colleagues. I could add them as a colleague if I wanted to. I could say, look, add to my colleagues, and SharePoint will remember that because we do have that information about the user. But what's nice about it is notice that it gives me, hey, who is this person related to? Do they have any direct reports? We know John does. But also, who's the bosses? So maybe we need to talk to the regional manager here. So I can click on the regional manager, and I'm going to get that same information just for William and find out what's going on. Pretty nice, huh? When you think about the ability here to be able to look for this information, we have some great results to be able to just look for people inside of there. So we have some nice flexibility. Once again, we're just pulling this information from our LDAP directory. So we're leveraging a resource that you should already have inside of your environments. So let me go ahead and go back to my home site here real quick. And let me head back to search. Now, these tabs that we have here are ways, and I'll talk about them here in a little bit, that you can control search. So maybe I just wanted to search the business data. I can click on the Customers tab and type in bike, I should say, and just go ahead and do a quick search on that. And I'm going to get those same results that are actually going to come up that I click on inside there, but I'm not going to get any results outside of the scope of customers or resellers in this case. But we imagine the power here is that you can control this. You can give people tabs. You can give the users inside your organizations tabs that kind of have a starting point. They kind of have a pre-shrunk scope saying, okay, you're only going to look for maybe just Word documents or PowerPoint documents or case IDs or support IDs. And really all we're doing is taking a subset of an index and controlling it based on whatever tab they click on. I'm going to show you how to do this a little bit later, but just want to kind of give you an idea of what we're seeing there. So let me go ahead and head back to the slides here for a few minutes. So let me bring my slide deck back up. So in that last demo, I just wanted to show you some of the end user improvements, just looking at some of the search, looking for people and the expertise that we have in the people, or looking at the management chain, who those folks are related to. And then we did a search for business data. We actually started off with a business data search, but you get a general idea of what we're looking for. Let's talk about some of the administrative improvements. Let's kind of change gears and kind of get into some of the admin improvements that we have. We've actually done several administrative improvements inside there. A couple things we've done. We've addressed some of the SharePoint Portal Server 2003 issues. Some around index size, some around index performance. Also, how we create scopes. Inside of 2003, if you created a scope of said set of data, you had to create that. You had a one-to-one relationship with the same index. So if you wanted a new scope, you had to create another index with those rules in. Well, we've decoupled the scopes from the actual indexes. What does allow you to do? Allow you to have a scope that has multiple index sources inside that. And actually, we'll show you that today, and we'll take a quick little tour. So that's one of the things we've done, among others. We actually unifies Windows SharePoint services and the Moss search, the actual search engines. I saw a question in the queue as I was waiting for some of the demos to come up around, hey, what's some of the differences between SharePoint services and Moss? And the differences here, I will put on my blog a link to the website. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but there's actually a lot of similarities that if you have Moss and SharePoint Server there, we actually unify that into one search engine and one search experience. So there's a lot of commonalities between the two now. They're being built on kind of the same platform for it to work with. We have full programmability inside of this. One of the nice things about from an administrative perspective is that, I hear all the times, well, you don't index as many documents as other people do. Well, folks, the great thing about our indexing engine is that we do index as many as the other folks say they index, and they index more. But a lot of our indexes, we don't double count versions of documents. So I've seen some of the counts of some of the other search engines out there where they say, Word 2.0 is 1, Word 6.0 is 2, Word 2003 is 3. And they say that's three different types of documents we index. Where at Microsoft we say we index .doc files, all versions. So that only shows up as 1. So don't worry so much about how many index documents we have, because we do every document you want to index. More importantly, worry about if there's a new format that comes up all of a sudden, or a new type of document, can my search engine be configured or be programmed or extended to control that new document? And with SharePoint Server, the answer to that question is absolutely yes. As a matter of fact, if you've done some of this extensibility at the Windows desktop search layer with creating what are called things called iFilters, which are document filters, or protocol handlers, which index different kind of content sources, that same programmality can be leveraged inside of SharePoint. So I already know there's some free add-ins out there that allow us to index, and index and work with Lotus Notes databases, allow us to index and work with Open Office documents, allow us to index and work with PDF files. All that's there, but more importantly, maybe you have a unique format to your company. Well, guess what? You can create your own filter that actually indexes those documents. Now that does involve writing code, folks, but we do have a very rich extensible environment. Improved scalability and performance. One of the nice things about this is really when you think about some of the older versions is that we've really improved how many documents can be in index, how performant those indexes are, and how fast our search results are going to be. And can we scale this across? Can we have the index spread over a couple servers? Yeah, you can. And there's a lot of things we can do there. Speaking of the index, what are some things that we've done there? We've actually streamlined the indexing experience. We'll talk a little about that as we go through and show you some of this. It's very easy to create the index, very easy to control what is indexed, what is not. What if something got in the index that shouldn't have been? How do we get rid of it without having to recreate the index right then and there? I'll show you how to do that as well. We have a lot better crawl logs and crawl rules to control how a crawl happens, what indexes, how it crawls across different sources. But more importantly, we give you a log. It's actually a pretty easy read log file, but if you do run into issues, it's going to give you a general idea. Hey, was it a network-related issue? Was it a permissions issue for the indexer? What happened? Why couldn't it crawl that document? Or if it did crawl successfully, we want to know that as well. And I've already mentioned we've decoupled the content sources from the scopes, and I'll show you where that is today. Security. We have query time security trimming, so that's something very, very important where we have the ability to trim out results people are not supposed to see. In other words, even though the documents are going to be indexed, people shouldn't be able to read them if they don't have permissions, and we actually do that. We have pluggable single sign-on, so you can actually have a single sign-on experience. So if we do go to those third-party apps, we can do this, as well as pluggable authentication, which allow you to do those same kind of security metrics to be able to control how people can do this. Now, this isn't so much for the Active Directory kind of environment, but what it allows you to do is have third-party products sign in and leverage these different components to have a single sign-on experience or have a single authentication point. So if you have other types of services we need to authenticate on, maybe it's a thumbprint reader or a card scanner or some other application, they're just components we can plug and play with inside of our SharePoint environment very, very easily. We also have granular security all the way on the documents. We can control indexes. We can control who can modify different things administrative control. You have some very nice security around just administration in general for it. Customization I've already talked about a little bit, folks. The great things about this is that, first off, we can actually even all the way down, customize it all the way down to the individual user and have the individual user's search page look different across the board. But everything you just saw in that last demo where I clicked on the different tabs and clicked on the result pages and clicked on the result for that bike shop, it's all completely customizable. Why? At the end of the day, folks, what is all that data coming back from? It's coming into a data web part. What can we do in web parts inside of SharePoint? Anything? Yeah, pretty much anything you want. It's a web part we can manipulate. More importantly, the nice thing about web parts is we can daisy chain them together. We can tie them together to actually give us that rich experience. The nice thing about this is that all these applications are completely customizable. And I'm going to show you that here in just a little bit, the different types of things that we can work with. Matter of fact, I think I'll probably show you a little bit right now. Actually, I scrolled down to the wrong slide. Whoops. Actually, I'm going to show you how to actually do this and how to actually add to the custom search tab. I'm not going to do a lot of work on the customization, but at least want to show you it's there and where you actually work with it. So let me hop back into my server, my demo platform for a moment. And let me minimize my tabs down. And let's talk about the administrative interface for a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the central administration, the SharePoint Server Central Administration site. The particular area we're going to go into is Shared Services. And inside the Shared Services, we have what are called Search Settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Search Settings. And a couple things here. We get some just general information right here at the top. It says, hey, we have 1,900 documents in our index. Right now there's no reports in the logs. We have a couple content sources. We don't have any crawl rules defined. Default content access account, that's for the indexing. Right now as the administrator, that's fine. We have 128 managed properties of the documents. We could add in more. Now, that's managed properties. That's the metadata. So we have 128 additional information that we're keeping track of. You can add in more, control that, how that works, how the search status works. Now, how do we control some of this? Well, I'm going to start off with kind of what probably the first thing you'll do after you install SharePoint Server, and that's actually define content sources. Where are you going to get your data from? So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. And notice it lists out a couple services. I have this thing called AdventureWorks, and I have local office SharePoint Server sites. Hey, I'm looking for my own sites. That's great. How do you create a new source? Very straightforward. You say new content source. And then you say, okay, I'm just going to do a file share real quick. And it's going to ask what kind of information. Is it a website, a file share, Exchange Public Folder will even do. And I can actually put in that file share in a fairly straightforward name. So I can just put in the name of whatever server I have and then whatever data source I have. So I'm actually going to create, I think, a fictitious one. I don't think I've actually created that directory yet. But I could set that up. And then it says crawl settings. What do you want to do? Do you want the folder and subfolders? Do you want the folder of each start address? What are you looking for inside of here? Because you could put multiple entries here, just have to have new lines. How are you going to handle that? Also comes, data is going to change over time. How does our indexer handle change? Well, we can do full crawls or incremental crawls periodically. And really the difference here is how fast they index. You'll probably do something, it's very similar to kind of backup technologies, right? You do a full backup on the weekends and incremental or possibly differential backups during the week. We can do the same thing here, and we can control that entire schedule, but just by setting up, hey, this is when I want to actually index the data. So I'm going to hopefully create an error here. So I'm going to say start full crawl of this content source that doesn't actually exist. Click OK. And it's going to try to crawl it, and my crawl log should catch, although I may not see it right away, and sometimes I don't in this particular demo. It should catch a resource, basically gives you an indication, hey, I couldn't find this, I timed out, I couldn't find this share. So part of the process here is making sure that you get everything's working on the network and that you've spelled everything properly. Obvious configuration information, as you imagine. So let me go back to my search settings. And let's talk about some of the other things that we have. And notice that I have my environment. Notice now I have errors and logs. That was 0 before. Now I have 1. And if I take a look at it, and this will take a second because it's actually chugging away, notice what it says, network path not found. Don't have the right data. So if you did miss out, guess what? The logs are going to tell you right away. Did everybody see how quick that changed too? Pretty much found it right away. Say it's not there, I can't find it. But that's how you can go and find that information. That's that new log file that we can look at. And if you need to look at a better log, there's this option that says crawl logs that allow you to control, hey, here's what we crawled, when did we actually crawl the data, and what was there, what happened, and it's going to give you some information. Here's the one with the warning. Then if I click on it, it tells me that same report that I just saw. So you get a general idea how nice it is to look through those crawls, because things are going to happen in your network and we may not be able to get to the data that we need to in a timely fashion. What are some other things we can do around crawls? We can actually do what are called crawl rules, which allow us to control which URLs that we want to actually include or possibly exclude out of this environment. So if I say new crawl rule, I can actually choose to include or exclude all the items in this path. So a good example of this is maybe you want to add some additional paths into a crawl that aren't getting there, or maybe you index too much by accident, or something's happening that results are coming back that shouldn't be coming back. You can actually come in here real easily and add a crawl rule that prevents that from being crawled in the future. But what happens if that does happen and you don't want to have the index be recreated, which you can reset all crawled content here and basically recreate the index? You can actually prevent what is called search result removal, which will allow you to say, you know what, take this result out of the list now. And when it does, it's an immediate kind of thing. It allows you to go back and fix your index because maybe you got something you weren't supposed to be able to. And before the index gets refreshed, you can come back and fix that. Here's our file types. Here's a default list of file types that you'll see. Pretty straightforward list of what kind of documents that we want. However, if I want to add in a new file type, very, very simple to do. Just a matter of clicking on the new file type in the upper left of this console. And then I basically define that file type of what document, what extension I'm going to have, and what I'm looking for. Very, very easy to do to control the different extensions that we have. We have the metadata properties, which allow us to define what the actual properties are going to be indexed, what's actually there, what databases or other mappings that they have. Allows us to take a look at the information basically that's being indexed in addition to the actual data in the documents or the database records that we have. Very, very nice. Very, very easy to configure. Just want to show you a couple things before we head out of this tab. Here's all my scopes. If I want to make a new scope, just go into the Define. Notice I have scopes, people, all sites, and customers. That reflects my tabs. Now, to make a new scope is probably the first step you'll make before you actually make the tab. So I'll just call this test, for example. Click OK. Now, all I'm doing here is creating the container. What's actually in the scope is done by what is called a rule. So I can go ahead and click on Add Rules here. And it allows me to say, okay, do I want all content, a specific type of content source? And if I choose content source, it's going to give me a list of all the content sources I currently have inside the environment. So it allows me to control this. Once again, you see the nature of, hey, these are not tied together, and I can control different content sources inside of here. So I can create my scopes. I'm going to cancel out. I'm not actually going to add any rules today. But I think you get the general idea of how easy it is to create a scope. Once again, just a subset, or it's kind of a pre-search before the actual search happens. So that's all I kind of want to show you on some of the search interface. Let me hop back out to the shared services settings here, and let me talk about business data for a minute, because one of the things that we did have is we did have business data. Now, before we can actually work with business data, we have to create what's called an application definition file. Now, I've already imported this particular file into my demonstration today, but I want to give you an idea of what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up with Notepad here. And here's the definition file. This is pure XML, folks. Definition file. What's the name of the application? AdventureWorks. And what database is it? It's a SQL. This happens to be a SQL Server database, although once again it could be anything we can talk to with pretty much ODBC or other database connection mechanisms. And then it comes down and says, okay, what are we looking for? Here's product, possibly a table in that, which it is. And then if I look down, I have reseller, which is another database that I have. these are all basically the tables that are in that application or that database environment. And everything underneath those table names are pretty much all the entities or the fields that are actually a part of that file, or part of that application, I should say. Now, I know most of you are looking at this going, there is no way I'm ever going to write this information. I'm never going to create this file. I'm not going to define the document. I don't know how to speak XML. And I agree with you, right? Because I'm one of those folks. I don't know how to speak XML either. So what I've done is done a little bit of research, and there's a couple up on a couple websites on the .net website, as well as Codeplex. I believe it's either .org or .com. I can never remember. There actually have been some developers out there that have created tools that you basically fill in a very simple form, and it spits out this definition file. You basically say, this is the application I'm looking for, this is where the application is located, this is a SQL app or an Oracle app, and it spits out the definition file for you. So it does all that background right in the XML document without having to do it. So you can write this by hand. We actually do publish this, how to actually create this file very, very nicely. However, if you're like me, I'm not really a developer. I don't really want to poke around the applications. I want to have a little tool that spits this file out. You can do that very, very, very easily inside of with a couple tools that I mentioned. Just once again, having to get it. Once you get this definition file, life becomes great inside of SharePoint, because then all I have to do is go into my shared services and say, let's import that application definition. And I'm going to browse for that file. I'm going to try to import it again just to show you the error message that will come up when we already have the application indexed. So I'm just clicking on import here, and it's going to go ahead and chug, and it's going to actually import the data. It's going to give me an error here saying, hey, this data has already been imported, which is fine. And that's what you see. Application failure, the following error occurred. It's the same, or it's possibly older than one of the ones that already exists. I'm going to click OK to that. That's fine. I don't need to retry it. But I've already imported that application, which is AdventureWorks right here. So let me go ahead and click on it and show you what's here. And inside of AdventureWorks, notice I get kind of the definition of database, access account, who actually comes in. It actually goes under the user context. Whoever's logged in and running the search is going to determine how we actually get the data that comes back in the application. What entities are actually being searched here, and these are basically the tables. So let me take a look at reseller here for a second. And inside of reseller, notice I have, yes, it is crawlable. You can manage it if you don't want that to be crawlable, you can. And then I have basically all the fields that are there, what kind of values they are, do I have any relationships to other databases, what are my actions. Remember I had that action tab? Here's where you can actually come in and define what does it mean when they click on edit customer or create a service record or something like that. It's very, very easy to do. It's just a matter of determining what you want to do. And once again, I think fundamentally we want the database source to change, not what's necessarily inside of SharePoint. More importantly, we want to give our users an easy way to do that. Here's where you can create those custom form solutions or just reroute them to the client-side app, for example. Now, how did SharePoint know about all this stuff that's here, about the fields, the data that's in the fields, and so on? It's that application definition file. Everything that we did in that application definition file basically fills out the information here for us to leverage and work with. So let me hop back just one page. So you get a general idea of I have this business data inside of it. Now, notice it says Business Data Catalog Applications. Because this is inside of SharePoint now as part of the Business Data Catalog, I have a web part that I can leverage and use and bring in for more information. It's just a matter of saying, okay, I just want a website that I want all these listed out in a data sheet view or just a list database kind of information. You can do that very, very easily here inside of SharePoint. So now also at the same time, if you want to export definitions, you can, but you can also always look at the permissions and change how that works. Once again, this is a shared service. So what does shared service buy us? It buys us the ability to leverage this data in other locations that we have inside of here. So let me head over to the SharePoint site for a second, and let me head into the actual search site itself. And notice I have a web page here, pretty vanilla, pretty generic. How do you make it look nice? Or what if I want to add a tab in? Well, this is a SharePoint site. I am logged on as an administrator, specifically administrator of this site and page. so I can modify it. So up here in the upper right I have a thing that says Site Actions. I'm going to go ahead and click on Site Actions, and I'm going to say Edit Page. And what does this do? It takes me to the web part editor. So if you've ever worked with SharePoint, folks, everything's pretty much done by web parts. You can add in new web parts if you want to. You can modify the existing parts, or in my case, let's add a new tab. Give it a second to give me my interface, and I'm just going to add a new tab to this environment, and I'll show you a little bit about what we can do when we add a tab. So I'm going to add a new tab. We'll just call this Scope 1. So maybe we're going to tie it to a scope. We're going to call it scope.aspx, and what will happen is SharePoint will create all these pages for us, and I can even create a cheesy little tooltip. This is my tooltip for scope. Make sure I spell it right. Scope 1. Click OK. Now I'm creating a tab that has done absolutely nothing. So if I click on Scope, as you might imagine, I get an error. Nothing's there. Why? I haven't tied it to a page yet. I haven't actually done anything to it, but I have a scope there. And notice I have my little tooltip, right, created as part of that tab. Now, how do you tie a scope, or how do you tie that tab to that environment? Very easy. We already did it, right? What did I do? I said scope.aspx. So now all I have to do is create a page. And we'll just call this Scope 1. We'll say it's scope.aspx. We'll give it the default search page settings. We do have some templates. By the way, you can create your own templates here. And click on Create, or I can always check spelling to make sure I got everything spelled right. Okay, it looks like I'm there. Cancel out of that. Oops. Should have let check. It usually comes up says it's spelled right, so give me a second here to go away. And I'm going to go ahead and create. Now, I probably misspelled it. I'm a notoriously bad speller. So I think that's why I'll always be a bad developer. But notice it gives me that Scope 1 and gives me the page, and now I can modify it. And if I publish this and go to my scope, there's my website. Woohoo! Just made a scope. Now, the trick is you got to tie that scope to the actual page itself, to the actual scope results that we want. So a couple ways we can do this. We can modify these web parts. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my edit menu here and say modify web part. And I believe it's actually scopes drop down. So I can actually bring the scopes drop down, or I can go miscellaneous, and I can actually tie it to certain result pages, or which scope am I actually going to bring into that environment. It's very, very easy to do to modify what scope of data we actually want. It's just a matter of now time to say, hey, only look for this scope that's on my SharePoint level, and then publish it out. So it's very, very easy to create it. But once again, folks, you don't have to write any code to do this. The beautiful thing about this is notice that it made my scope.asp page for me automatically. It created it based on what I told it. And the only thing you have to worry about when you create these pages and these scopes and tabs is that you're spelling the names right. I think that's a pretty easy trade-off for not having to write any code to be able to do this. Pretty much any web page inside of a SharePoint portal environment, when you're an administrator like I am, is editable to use. Not edible. It's editable. Ability to be able to actually edit the environment. So I'm going to go ahead and click back and head back to my slides for just a second. And we're going to talk about a couple things, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to show you some of the additional things that we can do around usage reporting. So back here in live meeting, let me go ahead and bring my slide deck back. So in that last demo, I just showed you how to add a tab, how to connect to a business data source, and how to actually add in content sources. Not really that hard to do, and pretty flexible, especially if you've ever done this in the past, folks. It really wasn't that easy to do. It is now, and it's that way by design to actually work with this environment. So what are some things we can do? Now, folks, one of the best ways we can improve relevancy inside of any organization is by improving our query results. And how do we know what people are looking? We can look for volume trends. We can look through click-through rates. We can look for just general analysis of what kind of queries people are running. We can also look as an alternative, how are the results being set out? What kind of results are they getting? And best thing about this is that in any of these results, we can actually go through and export this data to Excel to actually work with and be efficient with. Very, very easy to do. So let me just show you some of these reports real quick. This quick little demo. Let me head back to my demo environment. And I already brought up the query reports website. So what you're seeing here is a query report. Now this is periodically refreshed, so I may not get all the data that I queried during the demos, and I may not have a lot of rich set, but I can get a general idea. It looks like I got them all. It tells me what sites, how many occurrences, how many hits I have. Just gives me some general information of what kind of information. It also tells me, hey, what kind of scopes are people using? What can this query results thing tell you? Well, it might tell you, hey, what? Maybe I need to make another scope tab because everybody's looking for this certain type of word. Maybe I need to make a tab or make that a best bet so that information comes up. We can find that information out, once again, to help our users find the data that's important to them when it's important to them. And anytime we can also always take a look at the search results, and what the search results are going to show us is kind of what happened when people did click on these results. Did we have any with 0 results? Did we have any with certain result pages? What did people actually click through when they actually went through this information? So basic reporting, and I don't have anything with best bets or low click-through, but with some just basic information I can find out what's going on and how people are using the results that they find. So once again, they can help me do some analysis on, okay, maybe I need to get some more data here, or maybe I need to throw, maybe a lot of people are hitting a certain file server, maybe that server needs more resources to be more responsive. You're going to get that kind of data and that information to be able to help make your own decisions and tune your SharePoint environment to make it go better. So you get some nice general ideas here of what we get from the actual search results and the information that we have. So let me head back to my slides. Just want to show you just some of the default reports that are there, just to kind of give you an idea of what we can actually do. So what are some of the last things I want to talk about? It's just some general best practices around planning, some configuration things as well. And then we'll just end up the day, and I'll give us a few minutes here for questions, because I see I've got a few questions in queue. So let me hop towards the end of the planning. So what are some best practices for planning? Really, servers and capacity here. This is all going to depend on the nature and environment, how much data that you have. It's not really how big your company is, folks. It's how much data does your company have. It's going to go a long ways to, once again, determine how many servers you have to search, to support your search indexes. And searches could be an index-based, or it could be a search server. You can separate those roles out. So one server does all the query processing, one server holds the index, or you can put them all together. But how big they're going to need to be, I can tell you a single index can hold 50, upwards 50 million, even more documents. But guess what? Can that server handle a document that size? Does that, simple thing, does it have the basic hard drive space to handle that size? You have to know these types of things. We've got to be able to balance fresh data with server load, right? Being able to crawl and index data is great, and I think everyone wants to have data as up to date as we can. But what does that mean to you? Can we balance that fresh data with how often it takes to index our data? When those documents change, how do they look? What kind of information are we looking for here? It's always going to be a balance on your server load. Okay, I don't care what search engine you have, it comes at a cost. Indexing always will come at a cost. Also, how deep do we want the searches to go? How long do we want them to follow URL strings? Once again, you want to keep this fairly shallow if you can, but if your business environment requires it, we can do it. But once again, understand it's going to take a while to crawl each of those layers down the URL string as we find websites. What about configuration? Really, a nice thing about the configuration here is that you can customize it. Now, one of the things, once again, is that when you start customizing, we can do a lot of very straightforward and somewhat powerful things without having to write code. But you might need to write additional code to help to further make that site worthwhile to your users. So something you can always look at from a custom configuration. It's great that we can do it, but do we need to always do it? All right? Just because we can doesn't necessarily mean to, but depending on the nature of what you want to do, you might have different avenues for that. Dedicated servers for crawling large sites. Definitely not a bad idea. If you have a relatively large database or a lot of data that we're going to be indexing, having a dedicated server just to do that crawl is actually going to speed up the performance of the index, or more importantly, speed up the performance of the crawling on that actual server. define those rules, right? Define the impact rules around search result removal. Define the rules around what we can or cannot crawl to help further improve the performance of your server. Configure it and tune it. And the only way you're going to know how to do this, folks, is testing and playing with the actual product. All right. So what are some other things from operation? Use MOM. One of the nice things, we do have a MOM management pack for SharePoint server in general, so it does have search counters as well. Use MOM if you have it. Operations Manager. Fault tolerance with SQL clustering and load balancing. Well, where's all our indexes stored? In SharePoint, they're stored in the SQL engines in the back. Well, cluster those servers. Load balance those servers. Why? That speeds up your index. It gives you reliability. It gives you performance just by doing some native things that we do inside of SQL. Pause indexes to halt crawling. One of the things, if you find that your server's under workload, you can actually pause the actual index to halt that crawling temporarily, and actually pause that environment, temporarily suspend it. Now, with that said, it does run in the background. It's designed not to impact the rest of the server's performance. But if you notice, if you need to do something or if something's not happening right, you can always pause the indexes to halt crawling. Or maybe you find there's some issues with some of the information that's actually crawling too. You can always pause it to just temporarily stop it until you figure out what's going on and give you some time or give you a little bit of a grace period to actually stop and work with it. So one of the nice things about this is that we just talked about just search in general. This is just one aspect inside of SharePoint Server. That there's tons of different things that we can do here. Really, at the end of the day, we've done a lot of great work to increase the depth and the relevancy of our results, a lot of things to make it very, very easy for the users to help find the results that are important to them. Remember, it's not about how much we can index or how big that index is, although that's a part of the problem or part of the challenge and then part of the equation that we have. Really, at the end of the day, we've got to have great relevance. We've got to be able to know what our users are finding, and we've got to be able to do it. Over 2000, from previous versions in SharePoint 2003 and prior, we've done a lot of things to improve performance and make this a good, what I would call a good network citizen as well as a good citizen to itself by putting some of those services and things at lower priorities. And we also did some things around scalability and manageability to make it very, very nice and easy to work with. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back over to Craig for just a second. I'll look at some of the questions that we have in queue. So if you do have some questions that you want to add in, I am going to spend a few minutes here taking some live Q&A. And once again, thank you for everybody coming on the webcast today. And I will post the questions to my blog at blogs.technet.com/MatthewMS. And they should be up there in the next couple of days. So Craig, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes if you want to get them started on the survey and while I'm looking at the questions.
All right, fantastic. Another great presentation, Matt. I will do just as you said here. I will go over a few additional resources with our TechNet crowd. As Matt mentioned, we will get into our question and answer here in just a moment. But if you've got a question, now is the time to ask away. Simply go to the bottom of your screen and type the question in next to the Ask button, and then simply click that Ask button. As I mentioned earlier, you can view a replay of today's live event, or you can register for some upcoming webcasts by going to www.microsoft.com/webcast. A streaming media replay and downloadable WMV file will be available within 24 hours. I am going to be providing a survey for today's event in just a moment, and if I could, I really want to encourage you all to take a minute to go ahead and complete today's webcast evaluation. The comments and the feedback that you provide to us just make it possible for us to create better webcasts for you, so why not fill it out? Nothing to lose. Additionally, by attending this live webcast, which you all have obviously done, and submitting the evaluation, which we will get into here just in a few seconds, you will be entered to win a 30-gigabyte Zoom digital media player. So just by taking a moment out of your day to help us out, you have an opportunity to win some pretty neat hardware. With that, here is the evaluation. If you could, just go ahead and follow the links that are provided in your interface right now and complete today's webcast evaluation. Again, please note that your comments are quite valuable to us. With that, I am going to go ahead and hand the floor back to Matt so he can answer some of the questions that have come in.
All right. Thank you very much, Craig. I got a question. I brought this one up earlier, saw it earlier from Bill. What's the difference between SharePoint Services 3.0 and SharePoint Server 2007? There's actually a couple, but SharePoint Server 2007 does kind of build on the SharePoint Services. There's some good information on the website. If you just do a search on that same, pretty much that same question, they'll give you some data. I will post some data up onto my blog, especially around the search. There's tons of differences inside there, even though we have the same common platform. I will post some of that information for you. Question from Rick. Can you base the security on third-party security tables in SQL? Yeah, actually, with the business data specifically, there's actually a couple ways to do authentication and login. And you can either have SharePoint try to help front end that, or you can actually pass that to the back-end application itself. What I'll do for you, Rick, is I'll find some information for you and post it on my blog to give you some good data on how we can do this. But you can control the authentication authorization mechanisms from the actual business application itself, not necessarily from SharePoint. And basically what SharePoint's going to do is forward the request along, and then how you handle the back end is determined by that business data application itself. So the answer, I'm pretty sure if I'm reading your question right, the answer I'm pretty sure is yes. And I will get you some good data onto my blog if you just give me a couple days, if that's all right. I need to become a believer in performance. Desktop search really impacts my laptop. Watching your server doesn't make me a believer. Okay, first off, let me just preface. Once again, my server was running inside of a virtual PC environment with just a zillion things inside that, including Active Directory, Exchange, SQL reporting services, SharePoint server, as well as having Office onto it. So if you saw my server today and went, ooh, that's really kind of pokey, trust me, it's the entire nature of my virtual PC environment on real hardware, and even when this is when I'm not doing as many things on my laptop, it's a very, very fast solution. The desktop search one, I would it depends on what version of the desktop search you loaded. If you loaded one of the original versions we had, which was back in October or November last year, I would agree with you. It was a very slow version. The new version, specifically the one in Vista and even Windows Desktop Search, I think the most current one is 3.01, but the one before that, which was 2.6.6 and 6.5, were actually very, very performant. They were very reliable, and they were fast. So it's one of those things I'd have to look at, see what we're doing there. But if you're looking at my server saying, Matt, the server's slow, it's the nature of just the virtual PCs that we live in and the workload that I actually do inside that virtual PC. So Vince, good comment. Thank you very much for the feedback. Questions from Kay. There are tools on .NET and CodePlex. What are the name of those tools? The name of the tools are usually along the lines of Get Metadata or BDC. If you just do a search on business data or application definition, that should find that for you. If not, go up to my blog and drop me an email, but I'll post some information where those tools are at on my blog so I can get you the direct links for them. Second question, is search associated to a dictionary database as a part of the Office that it has it to be installed of, or part of 2003? The dictionary uses actually a part of the SharePoint Server 2007. It assumes that you possibly may not have Office on your SharePoint server, which in my example I do, but normally you probably won't. Now with that said, it pretty much is a very similar dictionary database because they're in the same product group, so they use that same kind of knowledge. I don't know if that dictionary can be updated. I will check and find out. I assume it can. I just haven't done it yet, and I'm not sure what format it is in. If it's in SQL, you can definitely update it. I don't know if it'll be in SQL database, but I'll do some research for that. Kay asked a lot of great questions. Give me a couple days on this, and I'll get this onto my blog. But for the most part, I'll get you the links for that. Just give me a couple days to get you actual direct links to the actual tools themselves. Can you download the server you showed us somewhere on the MS site? It would be nice to play with during the running installation. The particular server that you saw today, no, I can't give to you, and I can't. I don't think we have one up on the website downloaded. But give me just a second here. It's a great question. I believe, and let me track it down here. I believe there's a virtual lab, which is SharePoint server up there. And then what I'm trying to do is find the link right now as we are talking. And the virtual labs, I don't know if anybody's taken them on the webcast. They're great ways to learn any of our products. For pretty much every product that we have a virtual lab up. You basically have to have a passport to log into it. And what it'll do is actually allow you to go in and take a look and play with the actual servers themselves. And I'm seeing if there's one specifically for search. I don't see one specific for search. However, I do see one about the business data catalog. So I'm going to send you the main link to where you can find all those virtual labs. So I agree with you. It's a great way to learn. David, is a great way to play. If you go visit this website for the virtual labs, you'll have an environment where you can look for the actual office ones. However, the virtual labs folks in general, if you want to learn about SQL, Exchange, pretty much anything that's an IT kind of focus, there's virtual labs. There's also virtual labs out there for developers. So if you're a developer and you want to learn how to write virtual labs for codes, there's some great places out there for you as well. So the virtual labs are a great place. That's where I play if I don't always have the hardware to play with things or work with it. But it's also a free resource that it's designed for you guys out there to work with it inside the environment. Question, can the search be done in .NET? In other words, can we do the object model inside of it? I know we can get some of those objects, but I'll also talk to other developers with that. You will have to customize, depending on what you're looking for and what kind of file format you're looking for, you do have to customize an iFilter to be able to get a hold of those .NETs. It's another application or question that I have. How do you perform things programmatically? Kay, I'll publish the whole development guide for SharePoint Server if that'll work for you. It's a great question, and there's some great documentation on how to actually do things programmatically inside of SharePoint. Pretty much all those things, even the search engine, there's API sets that you can get a hold of, and I'll just forward you the main document for the developer guide if that'll work for you, Kay. Great, great question inside there. So let me go ahead and I will put that on my blog. But give me a couple days, Kay. I should get it up there. Hopefully, if I don't get it up by the end of the day, it'll be up by the end of the week. Couple thanks comments. No, thank you guys for coming out to my webcast today. I do appreciate the support. And once again, my blog, in case everybody missed it, is blogs.technet.com/MatthewMS. So if you visit that, give me a couple days. I do have an RSS feed for webcast questions and answers where you can actually look at inside of there. So a couple comments, thank you. And David B. out there, once again, thank you very much for your comments and your feedback. And if you want to send that to me in email, I'll forward it to my boss. Anyways, with that, I'm going to again say thank you to everybody. Thank you for Craig for hanging out with us today. And you guys have a great day, and look onto my blog here in the next couple days, and I'll have the Q&A log for y'all.
All right, fantastic. Well, again, great presentation, Matt. I would like to thank you for taking your time out of your day to present to everyone. I also want to thank everyone for attending today's webcast. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude the audio portion of this TechNet program. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you again soon. So have a good afternoon. Thank you.